Good afternoon and welcome to Midday Report, coming to you live from Warsaw. The European Union is looking for new ways to finance Ukraine's defense. Finance ministers are meeting in Luxembourg on Friday, and at the top of the agenda is whether to grant Ukraine a reparations loan. We are joined live by our correspondent Andrii Sybiha, who is in Brussels. Hi Angie, so what is the argument on the table?
Good afternoon. So yes, the main argument that the European Commission is pushing is that Ukraine needs cash, and Ukraine needs cash now. According to the World Bank, it will cost 506 billion euros over the next 10 years for Ukraine to reconstruct following the war. We're talking about building new roads, hospitals, as well as propping up its own budget. This is why the European Commission, led by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, wants to give Ukraine the money required through an audacious proposal, also known as a reparations loan. The way that it would work is using the cash proceeds from some of the frozen assets held in Belgium, giving that money to the European Commission writing a loan for Ukraine, and then Ukraine taking out this loan with the EU, this totaling roughly 140 billion euros. They will only pay it back once Russia fronts up the costs. However, this is quite an audacious proposal. Not all of the member states are across the line when it comes to convincing, particularly Belgium. But that is the task of the European Commissioner for the Economy, Valdis Dombrovskis, in Luxembourg today.
We expect to be able to table a concrete proposal in, I would say reasonably short time, because it's also needed to make sure that Ukraine is having financing at the latest by early second quarter of the next year.
Yes, so that is the European Commissioner for the Economy, Valdis Dombrovskis, speaking quite confidently there that proposal will get the sign-off from the 27 EU member states. We heard in recent days that the Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever is unsure, and he needs written guarantees from his 26 allies that they will share the responsibility as well as the burden if Russia comes to litigation wanting those frozen assets back. However, we have heard from our insiders here in the Belgian capital that this is not a confiscation. It is merely a borrowing. So we have to wait and see whether these leaders are convinced and as well as whether Ukraine can wait overnight. We saw those strikes occurring in the southern city of Zaporizhzhia, leaving at least one child dead, dozens wounded. So the big question is whether this proposal will get over the line in time and whether that Ukrainian country has time to wait.
Andrii Sybiha reporting from Brussels. Thank you. And now moving to the latest from Ukraine as the country continues to grapple with Russian aggression. In the most recent attack, a child was killed in Zaporizhzhia. Drones and missiles also damaged Kyiv power grid, cutting off electricity to thousands of people. Against this backdrop, Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has traveled to Ukraine to meet with his Ukrainian counterpart, Andrii Sybiha.
Ukraine was rocked by another wave of Russian attacks overnight on Friday. In Zaporizhzhia, a 7-year-old boy was killed. At least 3 other people were injured, and civilian infrastructure was damaged.
All the windows are shattered. The roof is pierced, the ceiling too. Everything is damaged.
There was a barrage of strikes. In total, we counted 32 explosions, brazen, cruel, at night as always. All the damaged sites were civilian infrastructure.
Near Kyiv, where at least a dozen people were injured,
it was another heavy night.
TVP World's guest was woken up by violent explosions from incoming drones.
The attack was going on for a whole night, and in the morning we received the information that also the ballistic rockets are heading Kyiv.
Thousands of people were left without power after Russian forces targeted Kyiv's power grid. But hope prevails.
Nobody is panicking. We're used to it. We had electricity recently, now we don't. We'll see how it goes.
In other areas of Ukraine, residents are encouraged to seek safety elsewhere.
I am addressing the residents of the city today, especially elderly people and families with children. It is time to evacuate.
Some have left already.
My daughter used to live in Zaporizhzhia, but they've left. I'm guarding both places now.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski traveled to Ukraine on Friday to meet with his Ukrainian counterpart Andrii Sybiha and to receive an honorary degree from Lviv University. He used the press conference at the university to deliver a reminder.
These attacks are a very serious event. It's the latest in a series of escalations. We know why they're doing it, to instill terror in the people ahead of the upcoming winter. Attacking civilian targets is a war crime. Putin is already facing charges for kidnapping and Russifying Ukrainian children. You'd think that would be enough for him.
He also called for a tougher response to Russia's relentless attacks.
And yet we have another wave of attacks. That's something that demands a response, ramping up sanctions on Russia and increasing aid to Ukraine.
During the conference, Sikorski added that although Europe continues to face hybrid threats coming from Russia, responding to them has already become a much quicker process.
Hungarian oil company MOL will supply Serbia with emergency crude oil after the country was cut off from its only source. This follows US sanctions imposed on Thursday against the Serbian petrochemical firm NIS.
This is JANAF, or Jadranski Naftovod, the only source of crude for Serbia. And as of Thursday, it's run dry. The operator of the pipeline no longer sends oil to Serbia, as that could get it into trouble for doing business with a sanctioned entity, the country's only refiner, NIS. But help is on the way, with Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó announcing that his country will provide Serbia with crude.
Of course, we stand by our Serbian friends. We are in constant contact, and since MOL, as the largest energy company in the region, plays an important role in oil supply and fuel delivery in Serbia, they can also count on MOL's increased deliveries.
NIS has fallen under sanctions because more than 50% of the company is directly or indirectly owned by the Russian energy giant Gazprom. Sanctions were originally levied in January this year and have been postponed several times to give the government in Belgrade time to react. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić, who prides himself on good relations with Russia's Vladimir Putin, has repeatedly said he's not going to touch Russian property. Instead, now he has to say things like this.
As for fuel, we now guarantee that there will be no problems for anyone until the new year. As for petroleum products like diesel, gasoline, unleaded gas, fuel oil, and everything else that is needed, we have enough reserves. All our stockpiles are full.
Hungary has been attacking JANAF for years for what it says are extortionate fees for crude transit, so the spat with Serbia plays into their hands. At the same time, Hungarian oil giant MOL is negotiating a new transit contract with the Croatian company, as their previous arrangement ends this year. Hungary is under pressure to end its purchases of Russian oil, and JANAF is the only way they could do it. But Budapest says the pipeline does not have enough capacity.
There was some uncertainty about whether it was technically possible or not. Of course, it is possible. Companies MOL and JANAF should agree on an appropriate price for transport tariffs. The larger the volume of oil ordered and the longer the contract duration, the lower the prices.
Whatever the outcome, the energy landscape in southern Europe is about to be upended.
The 2025 Nobel Peace Prize has been announced. The award went to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado for her efforts to promote democracy and human rights in her country. She was chosen over several high-profile nominees, including US President Donald Trump.
Venezuela's Maria Corina Machado has been named as the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize winner. During a ceremony in Norway's capital, she was described as a courageous defender of freedom who is actively resisting President Nicolas Maduro's authoritarian seizure of power.
She is receiving the Nobel Peace Prize for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy.
The 58-year-old, who last year won the EU Sakharov Prize, entered politics in 2002 and went on to help organise protests against Maduro in 2014. In 2023, she was named the unity candidate for the forthcoming presidential election, but was barred from holding public office. She was one of 338 candidates for this year's Nobel Award. Perhaps the most high-profile hopeful was US President Donald Trump, who has regularly highlighted his desire to receive the prize. Earlier this week, he brokered a Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. However, experts told Sky News that his was always an outside chance because nominations closed in January, just days after his inauguration, and actions such as withdrawing the US from the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Agreement, as well as the trade wars he's waged with allies, fly in the face of the notions of a peacemaker. Machado will be presented with a Nobel Peace Prize in December, along with an award of $1.2 million, earning her further international recognition and a place in the history books.
French President Emmanuel Macron is set to meet with members of major French parties to select the country's new prime minister. France has spiraled into political chaos yet again after Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigned just hours after appointing his new cabinet and only 1 month into the job. Lecornu's new cabinet was set to convene for the first time on Monday. However, his choice of ministers angered both sides of the political spectrum, with some calling the appointees too right-leaning, while others thought them not right-wing enough. Lecornu was President Emmanuel Macron's 5th prime minister in 2 years, and experts describe his resignation as yet another sign of France's deepening political crisis. French politics has become increasingly unstable since Macron's re-election in 2022, as no party holds a parliamentary majority. His decision to call a snap parliamentary election last year deepened the crisis by producing an even more fragmented parliament. And now moving to the Middle East, tens of thousands of Palestinians are making their way back to Gaza City as the Israeli military begins withdrawing from the area following the recently signed ceasefire agreement with Hamas. This marks the first stage of a broader peace process, which could eventually bring an end to the conflict.
Israeli tanks and armored vehicles were on the move on the border with Gaza this morning. Israelis are participating in a morning prayer at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square as they anticipate the hostages held by Hamas to be released. Displaced Palestinians are returning to Gaza as Israeli forces withdraw from the enclave.
I came this morning when they said there was withdrawal to find my home. I'm walking in the street, but I do not know where to go. Everything is so damaged.
All of this hours after the Israeli government ratified a peace deal with Hamas, an initial phase of the agreement and the least difficult one, according to a former Polish ambassador to Israel.
That is, I would say, the easy part of the agreement. Of course, it was not easy to get to this stage.
Getting there involved US President Donald Trump brokering a peace deal between both parties.
It was obviously the enormous achievement of Donald Trump, and everybody agrees with that, even his critics in the United States.
But more difficult steps are to come.
What we are witnessing now, maybe it's a new stage of finding an accommodation between these two people. If it will be lasting, how long, what will be the, I would say, what will be the framework of this agreement, we don't know. But let's hope that everything will go towards, I would say, more positive scenario.
For now, though, displaced Palestinians are returning to Gaza and hostages held by Hamas, both alive and deceased, are to be returned to Israel. 2 years after the bloodshed started.
And with this, we're concluding our news bulletin. Thank you for being with us, and please stay tuned for more.